So as you finish up, what we're going to do is save this for a discussion at a little bit later on. Now, if I debated back and forth whether to do it first or go over the things I gave you, and I wanted to go over these, whether or not you addressed some of the handouts in your concerns or things that worked in here, just because I love this stuff. And it might trigger some other thoughts for our discussion towards the end. So the first thing you'll need is your highlighters and the thing that says time templates. I got this from my Meeting the Needs of Diverse Learners, and I love this. Even just starting with that very first quote, which I highlighted, it said, "It has often been said that time is the currency of education." When I walk in to observe a teacher, one of the first things I do is write down the time, and then I'm constantly writing down how long it took for each thing. And when I meet with them, one of the things I have to talk to them is about their pacing and time on task and time management. And I know at the beginning of the year when we do starting the year off right, we talk about that. What are our time wasters? What are things that suck the time from our day? And also, how can we change those kinds of things? How can we streamline our educational process? With the teachers that I talk to here, I talk about having materials ready, because if you're in a classroom and you're trying to go and get things and then you lose their attention and you lose their focus, and I know that's something that's at home too. So I know you heard this at the beginning of the year, but it's a great time to reflect on it, which actually goes right to how do you rate your working conditions and what can you do to change them. How is the efficiency of your home classroom? How do you feel about when you're making those transitions from one subject to another? How is the materials that you have set up? Or when they're done with something, where does it go? I know as a resource teacher, we'll meet with families and the kids will forget their paper, or they didn't bring that sample or that kind of a thing, and the mom's looking at them saying, "But you had it in your folder, you had it here." And they're like, "No, I put it here." "Well, it was in my book." So that's something that we can always set as a goal, is an organization at home, which then goes into time management. The next part that I highlighted is that there not only do we need to budget our time and look at our schedule, our daily schedule, our weekly schedule, but we have to ask that question, is the task worth doing? I know that for you ask that question daily, and as a resource teacher, I always bring that up in my meetings. We'll be going through, especially whether you're doing the grid or your own, is this something valuable? I always ask my parents to take that step back and say, what's the purpose of this? What's my long-term goal with it? You know, it's funny because I love English and language arts, but I'll have moms who have 5th and 6th or 7th graders, and they'll get bogged down with doing the diagramming sentences and things. And I'll say, you know, I've spent a lot of time in education, a lot of time in college. I've never diagrammed a sentence. I really do. I mean, if it's something you value, then you do that. I don't know that that's something that's worth your time in terms of what kind of a person you're trying to create. If you like it, go ahead, but take that moment. Don't feel like you're a slave to either your lesson plans or the grid. Be discerning in it and say, is this worthwhile? What's the final goal I want for that? So I really like that. Is this worth doing? Then the strategies here are brilliant, and they work in a homeschool and they work in a classroom. The wait time, that's one of the things I have to watch the most when I go in and watch a teacher presenting a lesson. Most of us will ask a question, especially if you're at home and you're just one-on-one or one-on-two or one-on-three. We ask a question, and teachers do not like silence, believe it or not. They like it sometimes, but we don't like it when we ask a question, because to us, it means we didn't ask a good question or we're not doing a good job if there's silence. But kids need silence. And it's funny because even dealing with my kindergarten and first graders, I'll ask a question, and if there's silence, I'll wait a beat or two, and then I'll say, would you like me to wait some more? Or do you want some more help? Or would you like me to come back to you? And I am always amazed that there's kids that will say, I'd like you to wait some more. Because I would think they wouldn't want me to wait because, you know, all the attention's on them, but their brains are just still going through it. So wait time is huge, and it's something that teachers who've gone through the education, and we've got our credential, going into master's programs, we all still struggle with it. But practice it at home. Be cognizant of it when you're talking to your child about something they just read or an experiment they did, and you ask a question, see how long you wait.
Is it okay, in one of the classes I had, they said just to go ahead and let them have the book, to look for the answer. If that's okay still? Or?
Yes. You know what I love to do? And again, this goes back to that question of what's my purpose in this lesson? Am I teaching them how to find information? Is this lesson designed for mastery? And they've mastered it so much that they can say it back to me without the book? Or how to find information or how to process it?
I give an open book test because it's not so much that I want them to remember it all from their head. I want them to be able to use a book as a tool.
Are they supposed to remember at some point? I mean, mine's a kindergarten, obviously, he's not going to have a great memory span, but are they supposed to be developing memory of what they read?
They are supposed to be doing both. And I'll tell you, I have my daughter Delaney here, she's a freshman in college, and it was a huge wake up. I don't remember, it was 4th grade or 5th grade, and we were doing a social studies lesson. And she had the book, and probably was this one because I brought this from home. And she was supposed to, read the story and then answer the questions. And she got to the questions and she couldn't answer it. And I just thought, my God, it was right there. I think they even put it in bold. I just want to say, how do you not see that? But then I realized that we have to teach them how to get information from text. It's huge. So that I tell every family I ever meet with, you need to highlight, the tools you can teach anything with are highlighters, index cards, and sticky notes. You have those, and Kelsey knows, I tell starting kindergarten, you let them mark things up with a highlighter for any child who, when you're going over directions, have them highlight what are the key words in your directions. And it's great because I'll get my families bringing samples and the directions are highlighted. They're not going to do it well to start, no matter what age they are. They're going to highlight the most inane things. But as you teach them, it's an ongoing process throughout the years. Imagine if you started with Cole now and you were doing that. Imagine.
Because I was never taught how to
find the important things.
I was like, studying was hard for me.
Yeah, when I went to a college class for the first time, I had never taken a test, ever, never. And the first couple ones I failed at, and then I read a book on how to study and started highlighting and taking notes and stuff, and then it was easy. It was so funny. Yeah,
so anything that's consumable, have them highlight what's the key thing you're supposed to do on this problem. With text where they can't write in it, that's where sticky notes come in. So when and people who've been in my classes before know this, I always say, and actually it's in here too, which really validated it because I've just said it on my own and it's in one of these handouts. I always have them read the questions before they read the information and then put sticky notes like a number, like question number 1, and when they find it, they stick that in the book with the number 1 by it. They're finding information in text. So that's where you're hitting that skill. Then when you're ready for mastery in terms of you've memorized it, then you're hoping that they can say it back to you, reword it.
I can't wait to talk about the math because math is just all directions.
Yes.
There might be numbers there, but they're just all directions and they're so black and white. And once you master what the lingo is,
yep,
you can teach your child anything.
Yep. And they have to be able to know what's being asked of them.
Yes.
What are the key words
and what
they have
are
to
the
look
rules?
for?
You have to remember the rules. And once you get it down,
Exactly.
if they don't remember what product is, they're never going to be able to multiply it. They're going to still be trying to decipher whether, am I supposed to add, subtract,
Well, and as those of you whose children have taken the state testing, you realize that the language is different for every single area. It's always different.
When did they start the state testing?
2nd grade. Yeah. So, okay, so now I love the next one. It's called the 10-2 theory. And what it says is that you should teach for 10 minutes and reflect for 2. And just to go, I'm going to skip sequence for a second because I've always talked about the 10-2 theory. Teach and then let them reflect because we all need that, and there's going to be some things you'll see that support that. But I loved movement. It says I highlighted and starred this one. Legitimize movement. The brain can only absorb what the rear end can endure. And I loved that. I want to hang that up. It said let them stand for the 2 minutes of processing. So teach for 10 minutes, and then as they repeat it back, whether they're jumping or moving or bending, have them reflect on what they learned. Because look what supports that right down there next to it. Divide new skills into small, meaningful chunks and mass practice sentences. Always move real and meaningful things, use of the skills as soon as possible. And we'll see why under sequence. We remember best that which occurs, and I highlighted this, in the first few minutes and the last few minutes of instruction. So maximize that time. You want to make sure you grab them at the beginning of the lesson, and you want to have a great summary at the end. So that's that 10-2 thing, so we can get them in there and reflect back on what they learned in those first 10 minutes. And it says, if possible, reorder your list of things you want to teach them to place the difficult items at the beginning or the end. So that's a great strategy for when you're teaching, is to realize that they're really going to get most of it at the beginning and the end of the lesson. The middle is going to get kind of mushed in there. So let's break it up into chunks and review that. The supporting that is on the very next page. I stapled these together where it says forgetting. Most forgetting occurs within just a few minutes of learning. So build in reciting it, reviewing it, processing, and practicing immediately. I love that. So there we teach for 10 minutes, and rather doing a 30-minute lesson and then saying, okay, now's our break, stop and say, okay, while we do jumping jacks, let's say 3 important things we learned, or while we touch our toes and touch the ceiling, because it's also that physical response. I just saw it again on the news yesterday, that movement and exercise increases learning. So
My kids, when we're reading out loud and we're taking turns, my kids can't sit still, so I give them a paper clip to destroy.
There you go.
Because they're going to drive me nuts because they're moving, and if you're trying to read, anybody trying to read, if you see stuff out of the corner of your eyes, it's such a distraction. And I didn't know what to do, and I thought, I'm just going to give them something. I have to give something quiet because they can't sit still, so that
Will they
works.
still learn if they're...
They'll learn even
Absolutely.
more. Isn't